I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And I'm JT Simmons.
And today we have a From One to Wicked for you. Woo!
Woo!
And this one is really weird. If you've never heard of the Bell Witch, you definitely are in for a treat today, because I had a basic understanding of the Bell Witch, but I didn't understand that she...
Oh, no. There's nothing basic about the Bell Witch.
Right, there's nothing basic about this entity.
If you don't know what the Bell Witch is, but you know what the Blair Witch is, which everybody does, then you kind of do know what the Bell Witch is, because that's what it's based on.
Absolutely.
Ish. It's very strange, because the layers that you go through to get to the origin story, because even the Blair Witch is more based on a legend that is based on a legend that is based on the Bell Witch.
Yeah.
Because you go through, I think the Bell Witch is the only witch that a president has gone on record as encountering. The only time that, a military action was taken against a ghost.
Yep. And also, there's a whole website dedicated to this.
Oh, yeah.
It's literally like thebellwitch.com.
Sounds like our listeners are in for a treat.
Oh, yeah. It's full of information. Hold on, I will pull it up for you.
By all means, if you love deep diving into ghost stories and the layers of ghost story intensity, because then when you really get to that core story of the family, you're like, oh, there's more to this than just
absolutely,
the wronged property line story.
If I was a witch, I'd be the Belly Witch, because I would eat everything.
No.
Okay, so it is thebellwitch.org.
Ghostbusters.
I'd be the Slimer from Ghostbusters. What'd you say, baby?
It's thebellwitch.org.
Thebellwitch.org. It's .org.
.org.
So
what is it? .gov?
.edu.
.edu.
It is a wealth of information, though.
Wait, does that make it a non-profit or something?
No, the guy wrote a book. He made the website because he's obsessed with the Bell Witch,
and he's hardly the first.
Oh no,
there's even the movie, American Haunting.
Yes.
An American Haunting.
Yeah, bellwitch.com is dedicated to another book about the Bell Witch, and I guess they got to it first, so that's why you have .org.
That's why you have a .org.
But anywho, so
before we start, Madison, didn't you have a story that you were telling us beforehand? And now I was like, wait, save it for the podcast, because we do a Guest Gone Road segment. If you're new here, we do a Guest Gone Rogue segment because Chris, Madison, and I we
work in tourism.
We work in tourism,
and ghost tourism.
And just entertainment in general. And when you're dealing with entertainment, you're dealing with people. When you're dealing with people
in Savannah with alcohol and open containers, it is a fun time.
So go ahead and tell the story real quick before we get started on this Wicked from One to Wicked.
So I used to work for a different tour company at one point, and I was a manager before I left. And so one of the nights that I was working, I was heading down to River Street, and when I get there, the entire block is just losing their ever-living minds. So essentially, what had happened is a guest, before the tour was going to start, they had walked across River Street over by the river to smoke a cigarette. So they are finishing their cigarette and they're walking back over to the trolley because their tour is about to take off. And she walks out and a car speeds up on River Street, mind you, which is very hard to speed up in general. So this lady was
a lot of
already
cobblestone to speed up on.
Yeah, so this lady was already, she did not have much care to give anyway. So she speeds up and almost hits the lady with the cigarette. And so the lady with the cigarette gets very upset, obviously, and flicks her lit cigarette at the car. Whew. And so she leaves and gets back on the trolley. While the lady who was driving the car, literally in the middle of the road, stops her car, gets out, comes out over to the trolley and proceeds to pepper spray the entire trolley, including the driver and the tour guide.
Oh my God.
And so when I get there, the entire trolley is just literally like, my eyes.
Oh, no.
And then you've got, one of the restaurants down the street that's like running out with milk and like just throwing it in guests' faces and things like that. And
what a nightmare.
And the woman did not get arrested.
That woman,
She
should
didn't
totally be arrested.
Wait, how did she not get arrested?
The cops were like, well, we can't prove anything.
So you have eyewitnesses now. They all close their eyes.
Right.
Listen, SPD is better than that.
I swear, they literally did nothing. They were like, well, the best we can do is help get paramedics down here to assist, the people who were pepper sprayed.
That's assault.
Literally.
That's assault.
Well, the lady said that she did not do it. And that was, so they couldn't figure out who was lying. I know. So she did not get arrested.
Hang on, I need to stop and boo.
Boo. But yes, she did not get arrested. Nothing happened to her. And all those poor people were pepper sprayed in the eyes.
Yeah.
And
although really everyone should be pepper sprayed at least once in their life. That's
What?
I'm just saying.
I don't. Why? Why?
So you have the
sprayed?
expert. I have been pepper sprayed.
Oh,
I've been in the tear gas chamber. I've been pepper sprayed. I've received all various forms. I've been tased.
What the?
These are all
Military.
good things to learn how to deal with adverse situations.
I am not a conflict type of person. So I
need to be pepper sprayed.
I am a runaway
Hang on, I
type
got
of person. No. I am a runaway type of person. I will run and I will kick and I will squirm.
Yeah.
So that is my go-to method. I don't plan to get into any situations.
Yeah, I don't carry pepper spray, so I wouldn't. I don't.
I carry a taser, but zip, zip.
Yeah.
Little zap zap.
Yep.
Yeah. But
Well, cool.
anywho,
That was a good story, babe.
Yeah, so that's your guest gone rogue.
Guess gone rogue.
Guess
Do a
gone
ghost gone rogue now.
Yeah,
A ghost gone rogue.
That's just this building every time we film. So,
It's true.
anywho, into the Bell Witch.
All right, we were talking about the Bell Witch.
That everybody actually came here to listen to, not my stories, I'm sure.
Bell Witch.
Now everyone loves your stories. You kidding me?
But yes, if you want to hear more about my experiences dealing with the public,
Guess gone rogue.
Message us on Patreon.
.org.
Anywho, so let's start it out in the early 1800s. It's when all the good ghost stuff happens.
We should have sound effects like.
Yeah, like ghosts just aren't the same nowadays. It's they were really at their height in their prime in the 1800s.
I think there's too much media now. Ghosts are probably just all like surfing the internet.
Right.
If I were a ghost, I'd just be on the internet all day long and be like, what?
Wow, Oh,
are we still going on with the 1800s?
We're still in the 1800s.
I'm really trying to create
that illusion, that
well,
feel.
so there wouldn't be a town crier because this is like a small town in the middle of Tennessee.
The British are coming.
This is also
Why
after
is
the
that? What accent are you utilizing
Also,
here?
It's the Jamie Tart.
It's Jamie Tart.
British are coming.
It's all poopy. That's just poopy.
Hoopay.
Oh. Jamie
Anyways,
Tart, if you're a listener, which I don't think you are, but if you are, we love you.
if you don't watch Ted Lasso, go ahead and watch Ted Lasso.
Watch Ted Lasso. I don't know
what
you're
are you
doing.
even doing?
It's so good.
Unless you're,
Listening
under
to us.
18.
Jamie talk
Okay.
Jamie talk
All right. This will turn into a entirely different podcast very quickly. I have lots of strong feelings.
We start a Ted Lasso podcast right now.
Absolutely, I would do it.
John Bell John Bell Well, he moved. I'm so sorry for our unhinged start to this episode.
This is brutal.
Anyways, he moved from his family from North Carolina, North Kakalaki, to Robertson County, Tennessee, settling in the Red River community, which later became the present-day Adams, Tennessee, which is, I want to say, a little bit outside of Nashville. Mm-hmm. Nashville's like the closest big city, I believe, is. But anyways, so Bell purchased some land and a large house for his family, and over the next several years, he acquired more land, increasing it to 328 acres. It is a lot of land, especially back in the 1800s. He must have had some money because, if you can afford that much land as
it's like 500 shillings.
Land bearing.
Goodness gracious.
Land baron.
And cleared a number of fields for planting.
United States currency existed in the 1800s.
Shillings.
I don't know if it's before like 1880. If it's before the Titanic in the early 1900s, it's shillings and it.
Okay, so weirdly enough, shillings would still work with Titanic because they left from Britain. Shillings exist, so. I don't understand. I'm lost in this conversation.
Yes, shillings. Anyways, so he was a big part of the community. He became an elder at the Red River Baptist Church. And John and his wife, Lucy Bell, had 3 more children after moving to Tennessee. The Bells seem to have had a very happy and successful early life at the Red River settlement until it wasn't.
Dun, dun, dun,
dun, dun. And that's when the weird stuff starts to happen.
Oh, boy.
Weird.
And so one day in 1817, John Bell was inspecting his cornfield, as one does, and he encountered a strange-looking animal sitting in the middle of a corn row. Shocked by the appearance of the animal, which had the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Old rabbit.
That sounds cute.
It really does. I'm like, are we sure it wasn't a jackrabbit or like a chupacabra or
chupacabra?
Wow. We jumped from giant rabbit to chupacabra.
Well, I mean,
okay.
Well, okay, rabbit head with a dog body. I just wanted to be a chupacabra. That's kind of cute.
Jackrabbit.
Jackrabbit.
That's not what we're talking. No, it's the rabbit with the antlers.
That's a jackalope.
Yes.
Jackalope.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
No,
jackrabbits.
Jackrabbits can get very, very large.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Or a chupacabra, or a jackalope, or all of the above. Maybe he had all of them. It was a weird land. So, anyways.
Just quick side note. Have you seen the Chupacabra movie where he's on the cruise ship?
I'm sorry?
You say Chupacabra on a cruise ship?
Yeah, you saw it. We watched it together.
Oh, we did, yeah.
Chupacabra on a cruise ship?
Yes.
It's literally called Chupacabra.
It's unbelievably good. It's unbelievable.
I don't believe it. I refuse to believe it.
It's a sci-fi original.
Well, of course it is. I know that. I knew that from the moment you said.
It's called. I think it's called
Chupacabra
Dark. it's called Dark Seas or something. It's unbelievable. Just Google Chupacabra on a cruise ship. If you love campy B horror, you will literally be obsessed with this. Well, I love campy B horror.
Oh no, so do I. I absolutely do.
It's total garbage, but it is awesome.
Also, a side note about the Chupacabra movies and whatnot. Have you guys seen the trailer?
The cute one?
The really cute Chupacabra. I'm sorry.
Chupa.
Yeah, it's literally it's called Chupa, and it is the cutest
on Netflix.
thing.
It's actually out now, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I refuse to watch that because
you don't want to be endeared to the Chupacabra.
No, I want.
Hey, do you remember when we were talking about the Bell Witch?
I remember that. Okay. No, because we were talking about the possibility of
listeners are like, what are they on?
No, okay, we are talking about the Chupacabra possibly being on his land. This is not that far of a side tangent.
Yeah, it's a pretty. Just rabbit-headed dog. You
turns
jump
into a Chupacabra? No, honey.
Well, it was the 1800s. They didn't know what a Chupacabra was back then, so. There's plenty of reasonings.
Sure. No, of course.
100%.
Middle of Tennessee.
You never know. You never know.
All right, let's continue.
Anyways, so Bell shot the various creature. Probably
that's what you do when you see an animal you don't recognize or understand. You shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he shot it several times, but the animal just vanished. And this was the first documented manifestation of what is believed to be the Bell Witch.
Ooh.
And so. So Bell thought nothing more of the incident, at least not until after dinner.
Wait, so he just made it for the rest of the day?
Yeah.
Nah. And then while eating, he came to the
he came to the realization that something nefarious was afoot because you see.
So he had like an hour or two of respite from the encounter.
Yes.
And then he was like, "Lovely dinner, Martha. Wait a minute."
So, well, it wasn't really him pondering on the animal per se, but it was when they were sitting down for dinner as a family, they began hearing beating sounds on the outside walls of their log home.
Hey. Hell no.
And so the weird sounds would continue to increase with force every single night.
All right, things got spooky.
Some squatch action.
Oh, yes.
Spooky.
And so Bell and his sons would run outside to catch the culprit, but always returned empty-handed.
Catch the culprit.
But in the weeks that followed, the Bell...
Catch, you mean shoot?
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
Listen, this is a family-friendly podcast. We
don't talk about shooting?
Well, we don't need to talk about murdering the intruders and things like that. Anyway, so in the weeks that followed, the Bell children began waking up frightened because they would complain that rats were gnawing at their bedposts. Which also is not that uncommon for the 1800s and living in a log cabin. I mean, you know, I could totally...
And rats will chew on anything.
They will chew on anything. And so will dogs. We have a little rat who likes to chew on things as well. But anyways, so basically, after they started complaining about the rats chewing on their bedposts, the children began complaining of having their bed covers pulled from them and their pillows tossed onto the floor by a seemingly invisible entity. And also the entity allegedly turned a man into a mule.
Wait, back up.
Hold on.
I don't know.
Okay, hang on. I was on board.
Yeah, we were totally on board.
For a lot of this.
Okay, listen, I'm just getting this information from bellwitch.org.
Pulling covers, beating on walls. Man into mule seems newsworthy. It seems like that would make the town crier.
She turned him into a mule?
Yeah, allegedly.
Did she steal him and replace him? Did she steal him and replace him with a donkey?
I don't know. I'm just getting this information from the
Did a donkey show up and they're like, "Father, Papa"?
What led people to assume that the mule was formerly a man?
He was wearing his hat.
Did people recognize the mule? Were they looking at the mule and going, "Is that Jim? Jim, did somebody turn you into a mule?"
I think what happened is that Jim was in his house one day, and all of a sudden, out of his front door walks a mule wearing Jim's pants, his favorite pants. And that was what...
That must have been it.
There's definitely more. Wait, is there no more than
that?
That was literally the only context that I was given.
The only thing was, she turned a man into a mule, because that
brutal
seems sensational.
Yeah. Well,
sensational enough to draw more attention of the period.
So this is the information coming from children, mind you. The Bell children.
The Bell children probably looked at a mule and was like, "That's our neighbor."
Yes.
Like, are you sure that's just not a mule?
No. The witch did that. Anyways. So, although they did not call her the Bell Witch.
Well, of course not.
We'll get where...
Their name is Bell.
Exactly. Well, they didn't even call her a witch. They called her an entity of some sort, or things like that. They didn't call her a witch. It was actually Andrew Jackson who was the first person to call her the witch.
Bloody Andrew Jackson.
Yes. Anyway, so that was when she started to manifest. So after she had started, making all these noises, knocks, things like that, she acquired a voice.
Is he still a mule?
I have no information
I'm
on the
just
mule.
so confused on that. Like, is the guy a mule?
I got better. She turned me into a mule.
Oh my God. Okay.
Maybe that was who he saw out in the cornfield, was his other neighbor who got turned into a jackrabbit.
Or maybe he was on his way to becoming a mule.
Is there no way I can...
Mules look like, they have long ears,
I should probably like try to contact a Bell Witch expert to interview about some of this.
I'm pretty sure
we can make that trip. That's only like a 6-hour drive.
Well, they won't let you to the cave where they claimed that she lived and stuff.
The cave. Anyway, we need to keep going.
Yeah.
Anyways.
We are interrupting because the facts are coming hard and fast and difficult to swallow.
Well, we have a lot of things that we have to get through. So, it's got to come a little bit hard sometimes.
I'm excited. Let's do it.
Anyway, so at this, as time went on, the Bells began hearing faint whispering voices, which too weak to understand, but sounded like a feeble old woman singing hymns.
Ooh, that's see, we go from like rabbit dogs to actual creepy stuff.
Yeah, super creepy.
And then to a donkey, and then to more
range.
creepy.
Listen,
she's really got range. That's exactly what she has.
She's a quadruple threat.
Seriously.
She is everything and nothing all at once.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Oof, boy.
So the encounters would escalate, and the Bell's youngest daughter, Betsy Bell, began experiencing brutal encounters with the invisible entity. It would pull her hair and slap her relentlessly.
Oh, boy.
Often leaving welts and handprints on her face and body. Now, mind you, keep track of these things because this is from 1 to Wicked, so we need to be accounting for these.
Oh, I am. That's all I've been doing is accounting.
Okay.
I'm an accountant.
So the disturbances about which John Bell had vowed his family to secret finally escalated to the point that he shared his family trouble with his closest friend and neighbor, James Johnston, the mule.
The mule. Oh, God. Oh, Jim.
No, I'm just kidding. He wasn't the mule. Maybe he was.
I don't know.
So James Johnson was skeptical at first, but Johnson and his wife spent the night at the Bell home. Things began peacefully, but once they retired for the evening, they were subjected to some terrifying disturbances that the Bells had been experiencing. After their bed covers were yanked off and James was slapped, she was a fan of slapping.
She was a slapper.
She was an open hand lady, all right.
She was. He sprang out of bed exclaiming, "In the name of the Lord, who are you and what do you want?"
Okay.
That's what James...
That's a good... Yeah, that's solid. That's
really excellent.
Much better than JT's bizarre British Tennessean.
Jamie Tart in the South. But anyways, the entity did not respond. She's like, "I don't owe you an answer." And the rest of the night was peaceful.
Okay.
And so
no more slapping.
No more slapping.
From Will Witch.
The next morning, Mr. Johnson explained to the Bells that the culprit was likely an evil spirit, the kind that the Bible talks about.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sounds about right.
That sounds about right. Well, and mind you, the Bible was kind of like, for a lot of people, the only context of paranormal that anyone had.
That's a good point.
So it makes sense. The entity's voice strengthened over time and became loud and unmistakable. It sang hymns, quoted scripture, carried on intelligent conversation, and once even quoted word for word 2 sermons that were preached at the same time on the same day, 13 miles apart.
That sounds demonic.
Well,
Yeah.
how?
Right?
No, more, how did they know that these 2 sermons were performed simultaneously?
Well, so...
Were they able to, find the transcripts? I mean...
Yeah.
John Bell was an elder of the church,
that's
and
right.
it wasn't a big community, so my bet is that he probably...
Went to both sermons?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the word for word makes it like...
Yeah. It's like, did they have
there
a
was somebody writing
transcript?
down what the voice was saying and then go and say, well,
There was
look,
a
this is-
scribe.
Yeah, right.
I don't know,
Or did they
maybe.
get it and say, this sounds just like what the voice said?
Maybe they did. Maybe they did write it down and distribute it to people who couldn't make it to church. Or,
Maybe.
There could be.
Well, you made it to church. That wasn't negotiable back in the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
unless you had the plague.
Yeah, it would make sense that they would be at one church and
And
would
then go-
hear it and know
Right.
that it was. But the idea of being at a separate church 13 miles away, hearing it or having access to it seems like a weird...
Odd.
Yeah, a weird flex, because you could just say that it was word for word what one sermon said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe they're church hoppers.
They might be.
Maybe they go to multiple churches.
That's how they spent their Sundays, all day long. One church after the next.
All right.
Anyways, so word of the supernatural phenomenon soon spread outside of the settlement of Red River, and even to Nashville, where the Major General Andrew Jackson became interested in the so-called Bell Witch. He was a little a little paranormal freak like the rest of us.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, bring it.
Bring it. So John Bell Jr., along with his brothers, Drury, I don't know.
Drury.
I'm not kidding. That's his name.
Okay.
Drury.
Drewry. Drury Bell
Drury.
and Jesse Bell had fought under General Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans.
Okay.
So, Andrew Jackson's encounter.
Okay.
Let's bring it.
A few years later, in 1819, Jackson heard about the disturbances at the Bell home and decided to pay a visit and investigate. As Jackson's entourage, consisting of several men, well-groomed horses, and a large wagon, approached the Bell property, the wagon jolted to a sudden stop. It had become stuck in a muddy creek, which, I mean, rural Tennessee in the 1800s, that's
about right.
not unheard of. It had been stuck in a muddy creek bed, and the horses were unable to pull it. At least that was what the men thought. After several minutes of trying to coax the horses into pulling the wagon, Jackson proclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, that must be the Bell Witch."
Oh, he coined the phrase.
The Bell Witch.
He should have trademarked it.
He really should have.
He'd be so rich.
He would. Then suddenly, a disembodied female voice told Jackson that they could proceed and that she would see them again later that evening.
Oh, boy. Mm-hmm. That's big yikes.
They were then able to proceed across the property, up the lane, and to the Bell home. That evening, Jackson told old war stories while his entourage set up their tents in John and Lucy Bell's yard. One of the men claimed to be a witch tamer, which I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
A witch tamer?
Yeah, he could tame the witches, so...
Okay.
Like a snake, apparently.
I would imagine that call for that kind of thing, you know, when you think of witch hunters and witch people who can deal with witches, witch tamer is interesting. An interesting
Voice.
Because I also think that it is somebody who is afraid to call themselves a witch hunter for fear of retribution.
Right.
Someone who's afraid to call themselves, I don't harm witches. I don't,
Yeah.
Witch tamer.
Witch tamer. Okay.
So, after several uneventful hours, he pulled out a shiny pistol and proclaimed that its silver bullet would kill any evil spirit that it came into contact with. We'll see how that goes for him.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go well.
He went on to say that the reason nothing had happened to them was because whatever had been haunting the Bells was scared of his silver bullet. I don't think you've met Miss Bill Witch.
No, you haven't.
So, anyways, immediately the man screamed and began jerking his body in different directions, complaining that he was being stuck with pins and beaten severely.
Oh. Yeah, the pistol guy?
Yeah, the pistol man. The witch tamer.
Well,
The witch tamer.
She's like, tame this.
tame this, tame that.
And so, with a strong, swift kick to the man's butt from an invisible foot, it sent him out the front door.
I honestly,
I love her work.
We're becoming Bell Witch fans, and I don't think that's okay, but
Yeah, it's okay.
This whole website's dedicated to her, so yeah.
Exactly. So angry, the entity spoke up and announced that there was yet another fraud in Jackson's party. So, and that she would identify him the following evening.
okay.
She's like, "There's a snake in these fields, and I'm gonna sniff him out."
I thought you were going to say, there's a snake in my boot.
That's what I thought.
Oh God, this is so unhinged. This entire episode is unhinged.
It is. It really is.
It's a weird day.
It is
a
a
weird
weird
time.
It is. Yeah.
If you're a new listener and this is your first episode,
This is not a normal episode by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but
So, now terrified, Jackson's men begged to leave the Bell farm. Jackson insisted on staying. He wanted to know who the other fraud was. He's like, which one of you?
Dun, dun, dun.
He's like, which one of you will betray me? Anyways.
Andrew Jackson.
The men eventually went outside to sleep in their tents while continuously begging Jackson to leave. What happened next is not clear, but Jackson and his entourage were spotted in nearby Springfield early the next morning going to Nashville. Some allege that Jackson later proclaimed, "I would rather fight the British at New Orleans than fight the Bell Witch."
Whoa. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And
the suggestion might be that Jackson was the fraud.
This is our former This was our former president too,
Yes.
right? Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's on the $20 bill.
He is.
Yeah.
Also, he's a horrible, horrible human being.
Yes.
Is he?
Oh, yes.
I don't know nothing about him.
Yeah.
All you need to know is he's a horrible, horrible human being. We don't need to go into
Wow.
that.
Yes.
You can look it up yourself.
Yeah, you can look that up. But just know he'd rather fight in New Orleans than the Bell Witch.
Right. He'd
So-
rather fight in a battle.
Yes.
A fierce, fierce battle.
So the next situation would involve the youngest daughter's, Betsy Bell's, engagement.
Boom.
So over time, Betsy Bell became interested in Joshua Gardner, a young man who lived nearby. And with the blessing of their parents, they decided to marry. Everyone was happy about their engagement, except for one person. I bet
Are we using person?
one thing, if you will. But the evil, mysterious entity became furious and repeatedly ordered Betsy to not marry Joshua. She's like the nagging grandma. That's like,
He's not good enough for you.
he's not good enough. Well, she actually had a matchmate because she's a matchmaker as well, if you didn't know.
Who?
The Bell Witch.
No, what do you mean she's a matchmaker?
Oh, just wait. Anyways, so Joshua and Betsy had been engaged, but Betsy and Joshua's former school teacher, Professor Richard Powell, had been noticeably interested in Betsy. And for some time had expressed interest in marrying her when she became older, which is just gross. Anyways, by some accounts, Powell, who was 11 years older than Betsy, was a student of the occult, ventriloquism, a mathematical genius, and well-versed in horticulture and geology.
There's just
An occultist ventriloquist?
Yes.
That's you,
An
bro.
occult ventriloquist.
It
An
is you.
occult ventriloquist?
I'm telling you right now.
I'm not a ventriloquist.
You're just the type of person to do that.
Yes.
Is my point.
The occult ventriloquism?
Yeah.
With math and
You're
geology.
the occult puppeteer. You're the occult. Literally, you're the occultist
I am
puppeteer.
not an occultist.
Yeah, you are.
That's on the record. Not an occultist.
Definitely occultist.
Barely a ventriloquist.
You're a
Right.
sword wielding, business owning,
Yeah.
occultist, puppeteer,
Not an occultist. Moving
veteran,
on. Moving on.
And so the Bell Witch alluded that she wanted Betsy to marry Powell. Probably because he's an occultist.
Or
And,
maybe Powell is just on the property throwing his voice.
right.
And it's been Powell the whole time.
Right.
This is Scooby-Doo antics right here. He's pretending to be the Bell Witch in order to get Betsy to marry him.
Yes. But mind you, Powell was actually secretly married to a woman in Nashville named Esther Scott during the time that he lived and taught school at Red River and pretended to be a bachelor and expressed his unwavering fondness for Betsy Bell. I think it was
Secretly married?
right. I don't know how. I'm like, why secretly?
Why secretly? What purpose secretly?
I think it was because he wanted to marry Betsy Bell,
well, that
and
makes
then
sense.
but also he wanted to get in on this Bell Witch nonsense.
Yeah. I know it's my love for you at the mountaintops, babe.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Anyways, so according to early accounts, Powell politely expressed his disappointment with Betsy's engagement to Joshua and wished her a long and prosperous marriage. Petty. Anyways, Betsy and Joshua could not go to the river, the fields, or the cave without the entity nagging them, saying that they shouldn't be together.
Okay.
The constant pressure was more than Betsy Bell could handle, and on Easter Monday of 1821, she met Joshua at the river and broke off the engagement.
Oh.
She did not go on to marry Powell, mind you.
Man.
So after the sad encounter of the engagement being broken up by the matchmaker Bell Witch, this is when things would take a sharp turn for John Bell.
Okay.
The disturbances would decrease a bit after the engagement was broken off, but the entity continued to express disdain for John Bell, relentlessly vowing to kill him. Bell had been experiencing episodes of twitching in his face and difficulty swallowing for almost a year, and he began to grow worse over time.
Here's what I love. Can I just real fast? Here's what I love, and this has to do with From One to Wicked. You know, here's what I love about the Bell Witch. She comes at you from any angle.
She does.
She wants to.
Absolutely.
Like, she'll give you the slowest type of cancer to kill you and make you suffer, or she'll just slap the crap out of you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She's very handsy.
Yeah.
She'll turn you into a mule.
She'll turn you into something.
She'll break off your engagement if she doesn't like it.
Where did she come from again?
We need to move on.
Oh, sorry.
Because I think
so. That's gonna happen.
Yes, ultimately we'll be talking about that. But
I need to know the origin of this magnificent
you
woman.
kind of have to hear the whole story to appreciate a lot of these origin theories.
Yes.
So, anywho, by the fall of 1820, his declining health had confined him to the house, where the entity continuously removed his shoes when he tried to walk, and slapped his face when he recovered from his numerous seizures.
There it is.
She's so brutal. Wait, smack. I gave you the seizure, and I'm going to smack the fire out of you?
Yes.
Lord.
Her shrill voice was heard all over the farm, cursing and chastising old Jack Bell, the nickname she'd given him.
Okay.
Wow.
John Bell breathed his last breath on the morning of December 20th, 1920, after slipping into a coma a day earlier. Immediately after his death, his family found a vial of strange black liquid in the cupboard. So John Jr., the genius that he is, sprinkled 2 drops on the cat's tongue, like the cat did something. Wow. And the cat jumped up into the air, rolled over in midair, and was dead when it hit the floor.
What? Mm-hmm. This episode is not cruelty-free.
No, it's not.
No.
And the entity then exclaimed, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night," which fixed him.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
John Jr. tossed the mysterious vial into the fireplace. It burst into a bright blue flame and shot up the chimney.
Whoa. Harry Potter style.
Right. John Bell's funeral. So this was one of the largest ever held in Robertson County, Tennessee. People attended from 2 miles away, and 3 preachers, 2 Methodists and 1 Baptist, eulogized him. As the crowd of mourners began leaving the graveyard, the Bell Witch entity laughed and sang a song about a bottle of brandy. And her fervent singing didn't stop until the last mourner had left the graveyard.
I relate to this Bell Witch because I'm also ADHD.
It's true.
This is some junk I do, right?
Right.
Also, it
so
should be noted,
violent.
It's 1820, not 1920.
Oh, yes. Sorry. That was my bad.
I was just like, man, he lived a long time.
No, 1820.
So my whole brain was like, oh, my God.
Yes, I misread.
How did he live so long?
I misread that. Excuse me. 1820. Yes, you are correct. Anyways.
I was like, it's just like crunching my brain a little. I was like, what?
What? Anyways.
So the Bell Witch just dragged out his suffering over 100 years.
So the entity's presence was almost non-existent after John Bell's demise, as though it had fulfilled its purpose. So she went away for a bit, had a little vacation. She had done a lot in the time of tormenting John Bell.
She was a solid tormentor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But in April of 1821, shortly after Betsy Bell had broken off her engagement, the entity visited John Bell's widow, Lucy Bell, and told her that it was leaving, but would return in 7 years.
Ooh. I like when they give
extended,
a random...
extended vacation.
Yes. And so the entity returned in 1828, as promised, and most of the return visits centered on John Bell Jr., with whom the entity discussed the origin of life, civilizations, Christianity, and the need for a major spiritual reawakening.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Whoa.
Of particular significance were its predictions of the Civil War and other major events, which some of them she had missed while on her hiatus. The entity said goodbye again after 3 weeks, promising to visit John Bell's most direct descendant in 107 years.
She has, a schedule.
She does.
She got that calendar.
She does. And that year would be 1935. And the closest living direct descendant at that time was Nashville physician Dr. Charles Bailey Bell, a neurologist and John Bell Sr.'s great-grandson. And in 1934, Dr. Bell published a book about the Bell Witch, likely to raise awareness of the spirit's impending return. The book contains the first ever account of the alleged conferences between the entity and John Bell Jr. in 1928. The author's father, Dr. Joel Thomas Bell, had allegedly taken notes during the conferences and upon his death passed them down to him, Dr. Charles Bailey Bell.
1828, right?
Yes.
Okay. You keep saying that.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I've read a lot of things this morning.
No, it's cool. So, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, thank you. Anyways, Dr. Bell published no follow-up to his 1934 book. He died in 1945 and is buried at Bellwood Cemetery in Adams, Tennessee.
Ooh.
So did the Bell Witch return in 1935 as promised? Some say she did not return, or that if she did, they were not aware of it. But many say she never left the place to begin with. So really, she's not doing any kind of like crazy stuff nowadays, because it is often blamed. She is often blamed for unexplainable manifestations that occur near the old Bell Farm. The faint sounds of people talking and children playing can sometimes be heard in the area, and it's not uncommon to see candle lights dance through the dark fields late at night. Photography is especially difficult. Some pictures taken in the area show mist, orbs of light, and other phenomena, including human-like figures who were not present when the pictures were taken.
Okay.
There you go.
Now, I would like to hear what your thoughts are of where she came from.
So, there's a lot of intrigue about it, and there was a prevailing belief, and I think that it became the central point of American Haunting. If you haven't seen the movie American Haunting, the spoiler alert. And the belief was that Betsy, the eldest daughter, was being abused by John Bell. And that the manifestation was latent psychokinetic energy that Betsy had manifesting, or maybe even summoning and calling some kind of naturalistic phenomenon that took a very pointed vengeance run at the father. And I found that to be an incredibly intriguing and interesting thing because of how very pointed a lot of these assaults and a lot of these things were. Because some of the prevailing thoughts were the experiences that people were having of in that early stage where Betsy was being beaten and left with handprints was actually John Bell and not the Bell Witch, and that the manifestations that came from that were that Betsy was a very strong, psychically charged medium or natural born conjurer who was able to manifest her hatred and anger to become solid, to become a thing, which is a fascinating thing because I think when people start really talking, because the Bell Witch doesn't have any. And I want to say there might be some people who have come up with like who it was like. There's some people who think it was a property dispute. That there was a woman who lived on the property, and when John Bell bought it, he actually bought the land that didn't belong to him.
Right.
He bought this woman's land, and she set to set it right and was very pointed against it. So that's one of the stories. The Bell Witch Cave was believed to be where she ended up having to to retreat to, because in the purchase of the land, like she did not have any documentation. She just lived on the land. So that was another predominant thing. But one of those interesting things is there came a point at which the Bell Witch entity was predicting the future. And now you are no longer dealing with just a simple like manifestation of a person on there's somebody tapped in. They've tapped in to something larger, greater, grander. But I've always been fascinated by that construct of what if it was because when you take into the age of Betsy when she arrived on the land and how potent a period of time that is usually in the psychic awakening of young girls who have innate abilities, it could be easily thought that if she were distressed and distraught, her call for help would be heeded and listened. And the Tennessee wilds, all of the woods around, the Appalachian Trail, all of it.
Right.
You kind of get this sensation that there is in nature a source that if you were so inclined or so empowered to do so, you could corral that force. You could create you could manifest a purpose for that force. And so I think that it's interesting because it talks about how it starts at whispers and it was getting stronger and it became a voice that was clear and spoke clearly and would say very clear things. And so now we're really talking about an entity that was basically in its infancy when it would show up as an animal that wasn't correctly formed into a full-blown speaking and schedule making powerful.
So you're saying the Bell Witch started as a protector.
I think it was being drawn by a very specific need, and that need would be defense and protection.
Interesting.
But again, I don't think it was Betsy's
intention.
Doing. Yeah. I think it was just being drawn to the distress, and then manifesting more and more solid as the distress went on.
Okay.
And that's just one theory. That's just one idea behind it. But I do like that one because no one was ever really able to identify like who the Bell Witch was and why she had such a harsh, why she focused so hard on John, which is the land dispute works in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You could say like like the Hampton Lillibridge demon, like an ancient force too.
Right.
Because they evolve with the times. They evolve to act like and replicate what the times know.
Absolutely.
Like what the people know.
And they're learning, and that's
exactly.
And to present yourself because when you think of like something ancient and natural, has no real concept of what you perceive or understand. And even if you took that very first encounter, you've come to a new place, the energy of the place presents itself. It's like, I will make a form and I will create a form for you to witness me. And the first thing you do is shoot it.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, that John Bell's a jerk.
Right.
I don't like that John Bell. I came in a bunny dog and he shot at me, so I'm going to hold a grudge for all time.
For all of eternity and all of his ancestors.
Smack him on his deathbed.
What is that it? Is that all? That's all?
Yes.
That's all we know about? I thought she killed people. Like full blown.
Bell.
Yeah, no, people who like came into the cave and stuff.
Okay, so that's interesting because there is a long, like I was saying about the Blair Witch. The Blair Witch project is based on the many legends that come after, because that is the core of the story. Is it all focuses around the Bell family?
Sure,
but there are a lot of people who are like, well, a group of people went into the cave and they were encountered this and they died. Yeah. There's no evidence of that. There's
that's why I didn't include
just a common story.
I can't stand from one to wicked because they're never as wicked as you think.
Listen to this guy.
Oh my God,
she killed a man.
No, she's a 6'5".
No. You're missing all the torment.
She did.
She absolutely mentally anguished, mentally tormented, smacked people, physical interaction, and then on top of that, the denote here is she physically poisoned him, utilizing some kind of physical thing. Which again, it's not the same as like just reaching and stopping a person's heart.
I'm disappointed.
Why?
Because I thought that this story was going to be like, in 1976, two people entered the cave and, one came out and
the cave
there was
is actually like very.
And the person said
the cave is actually very like not super important to the story.
Why can't you go into the cave?
Because people vandalize it. Because people like you
I would never vandalize. I would not vandalize that film.
No. You go in. You grab a rock. You'd move things around. You'd say, well, what if I put a star over here? What if I tapped a crucifix into the wall over there? Right? Because the vandalism isn't people just spray painting around. Yeah. It's just people wanting souvenirs, people wanting, I could take camp a out there.
Yeah, I might take a souvenir. That's not vandalism, though. But I wouldn't go spray painting.
That will become vandalism in time.
Yeah.
When because people would be like, well, there are no rocks. Well, I'll just take this hammer and knock off a rock.
I'm not interested in going to the cave because there's obviously nothing there.
Absolutely.
Well, the Bell property.
Stinks.
Well, the Bell property, where John Bell is buried, is on the Bell property.
Yeah,
they have their own family cemetery.
They have their own family cemetery.
So that's the whole thing. That's where all of the nonsense really happens. The cave just happened to be on their property, and that was where the legends of, like Chris was saying, where the old lady or whoever,
right. The hag,
that's where she went off. But there was not really any evidence that lady even existed.
Right.
I think it's an ancient entity, and it sounds like it leans on the demonic side, not even just because of its violent actions, but because of the fact that one, it learns, two, it predicts things, and it wants to share this information.
Right.
Like with John Bell Jr., how they were talking about civilizations and how there
trying
needs to be
sway his understanding of the universe, right?
Exactly. That is
exchange of knowledge.
That was freaky to me because I'm like, that's not a good thing to talk to the Bell Witch about. Maybe you should keep it a little bit more casual with her. But
that as a level of wickedness, the idea that this entity may have been trying to alter the Christian faith, to introduce ideas and allow a person to go out into the world with new and probably conflicting accounts.
So you're saying its wickedness is in its intelligence?
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
And its strength.
Intent and strength. You'd be surprised how very, very rare it is for any physical connection with a spirit is. It's so rare to have welt marks from a smack or and if it does happen, it's usually just once. It's not a repeatable long-term thing. Whenever those happen, they become like the spikes of stories. You're like, oh, this person is super, super scary. We should do the entity.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, what?
The entity.
Just the entity?
So, no. I used the entity because it was the film that was made about the specific haunting, but it was about a woman who was routinely and regularly assaulted by a spirit, and even under scientific watch, it happened while they were watching it.
Okay,
so it's worth talking about. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
So my big thing with it is it also was trying to control their lives, their choices in life, with Betsy Bell being like, hey, you can't marry this guy or I'm going to make your life really awful. Because I want you to marry this other guy. That's not normal with entities. I mean, no entity should be ever telling you what you can and cannot do with your your life. So, that's concerning as well. These are all things that take their wickedness up because it's different than some of the other entities that we've, distinguished in the past.
Yeah, and to propose an even more diabolical situation is if Powell indeed was an occultist and a ventriloquist for that matter, the goal would be to be born into this world. The goal would be to be impregnated, and the occultist would have been able to situate and allow for this entity to have a human existence. Because ventriloquism and puppeteering fall in and out of favor because there's this belief that you are trying to homunculize or to make a golem. That kind of syndrome of utilizing dark arts. And so, the fact that those two things stick out. If you're an occultist ventriloquist, it comes to this idea of, are you trying to bring an inanimate object to life? Are you trying to put a spirit inside an inanimate object? Are you trying to bring, are you looking for a vessel? And maybe Powell was chosen by the Bell Witch for the purpose of bringing them into this world, which
Sure.
could have easily become also the more vicious and of course the disappearing act.
Yeah.
When it didn't happen, it's like, well, looks like I'm not going to be coming to this world. I'll see you in 7
Right.
years. I'll see you in 107 years.
So how we defined wicked, like most things, is subjective. How I define wicked is 1 through 5. How wicked were they when they were active? And 5 through 10, how active are they currently, and how wicked are they?
Well, we don't know when she's
As
going to
they're-
come back.
Yeah. Well, she hasn't yet. So what I'm
Well,
saying
actually-
is, I'm giving her a 6.
We don't know.
I'm
Actually,
giving
we,
her a 6.
we don't know because she was supposed to come back in 1935.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's enough evidence there that supports, and mind you, it's the 30s. People are a lot less open to the idea of their doctor having this ancient ghoulie coming to come see them.
Yeah.
So, of course, he's not going to, be outright with like,
get
this
it.
is exactly what happened when the Bell Witch came to see me. But he did write a book right before her return.
Yeah.
So,
And that does also raise the question of, was it closest by blood, closest by location? Were there Bell
I think by blood.
are there Bell descendants that we didn't really know about, who might have been visited?
Who might have
Right.
Yeah, who might have been
that's just
catching all
I like
kinds of
it.
hell,
can't-
and nobody knows why.
I can't include that though, just in my
Because it's
own
speculation,
because
right.
it's just speculation.
Well, and that's the problem
So,
with it as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when I give it a 6, I'm basically putting it up against Robert the Doll, Bloody Mackenzie, entities that are active to this very moment that we talk, and that hurt people for the very moment that we talk. Bell Witch is not that. I give it a 6 because she was wicked back then. Totally filled that 1 through 5 up, plus a little bit. But currently, I'm not super impressed. That's just how I do it.
I think you're just a little desensitized.
Well, you want a horror movie, and believe it or not, it's not going to happen. Even Bloody Mackenzie's not that great a story. It's not.
I love Bloody Mackenzie.
Well,
He's the only
what I
nine
mean-
we have.
What I mean is, he relies heavily on folklore, legend, and
Yeah.
and word of mouth. If you went simply by the fact that the Bell Witch, you've got a regiment of soldiers, not just a 1-2 shot or people talking about the dead who
Sure.
you can never know exactly what that is. You've got a bunch of living people, an entire regiment.
I understand. I'm just saying.
Speaking out on this one thing.
There were a bunch of, I know it's word of mouth, but it was also to a certain degree documented in Edinburgh that Bloody Mackenzie continues to hurt people to this day. And when you go to his tomb, like we did, you really feel the evil.
Oh, sure.
He is there.
But you see,
He's
that's
evil.
a
It's
bias that you
chained
have for
and
being
barred.
there, but you haven't been to Bell property.
No,
you
I have
know,
not.
and
It is a-
again,
yeah.
so you start to really vie for and go towards
Yeah.
these different kinds of ideas. I usually think of Bell Witch pretty high for staying power. I don't think about how effective they are now, because that doesn't matter at this point. The longevity of a spirit doesn't matter as much as
That wouldn't define its power.
Their impact.
not to me.
Well-
Because if an entity, say, rolled into town and killed 100 people in a single night, and then we never saw them again, never heard from them again, I'd still count that pretty high. I would still put that at a large level by impact.
Yeah.
By longevity of story. Who's still telling this story? The fact that there are apparently
fair.
enough websites that you need to get a .org just to tell the story as you found it suggests that at the very least, the story's endurance is strong enough, and the fear of whatever this entity was is strong enough. I find it difficult to dismiss the Bell Witch as anything less than like an 8,
Whoa.
because she is directly blamed for the death of a person.
She's up there with Robert the Doll. 'Cause wasn't Robert the Doll an 8?
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
directly involved in the death of a person, still talked about, with fervent argument, still effectively one of the most popular ghosts
Right.
or entities in the country.
Yeah.
That's because I like the 5/5. Your 5/5 makes a lot of sense. But I don't I don't think its inactivity in present day should necessarily diminish it. The question is,
that's fair.
What were the actions? What were those actions? Those actions were a lot of physical abuse.
A lot of physical abuse.
Firsthand accounts from many people who were physically abused. So now you have people who are saying, this happened to me. I got pulled up. I got smacked around. I got, a voice came out and yelled at me. Sure. An entire regiment saying,
nope.
This stopped, and then this stopped, and then we ran. We ran away, which to me is a missing piece of this story, is what happened between Andrew Jackson being like, we're staying, and the next morning being like, la, 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 la.
And I think that was I think that's on purpose, though. I think he did not want people to see him.
Well, that's why I was wondering if he was also the fraud.
Sure.
Because that would be the proof that there was a fraud.
He was a bad person.
He's a bad person.
Okay, so he would lie.
He's a bad person. I think he was very self-righteous. So I don't know that it would be a question of lies as much as a question of
morality, having
his morality so deeply maligned, and the fraud being he wasn't as brave as he claimed to be.
I agree with the 8, honestly, because I typically want to see a little bit more longevity with a lot of the entities that we rate, because they aren't as intense in their prime as this. This is like almost 2 decades.
Right. This was never a person too. That's another thing worth mentioning. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Because it was not a person whose actions when they were alive tell us what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
This is something that haunted this family and apparently still continues to haunt the bloodline, for almost 2 decades, where it literally was just torturing these people and controlling every single part of their lives. And that sounds like an abusive relationship to me. So
could she be a Wendigo?
No. Because Wendigos are when basically cannibals.
It's a cannibal result of cannibalism, and very rarely exhibit intelligence.
And also, that's not really Wendigo territory. Really. That's when you get up into like Minnesota and like all that kind of North Shore kind of area. This definitely feels more like, to me at least, just my personal theory, ancient spirit may have been attached to the land, may have been just attracted to that land because of whatever was going on in the family.
Sure.
And then it got power because of the fear that it instilled in this family, in the torment that it instilled. It just got progressively worse and worse and worse.
That does raise the question too, that weird be back in 7 years, be back in 107 years. Just the notion that it needed those kinds of cycles of rest, or where did it go, or what was it doing, and it seems as though in the 7 years that I was missing, it went out and came up with a plan. As it came back with, let's talk about
this
civilization and the beginning of civilization, almost as if, and that falls into a line of demonic ideology where you're like, oh, this demon wants to rewrite the church,
right?
Wants to get people to follow a new truth, wants to dethrone the God that's there and supplant it with their own version. Well,
and that would make sense too, with John Bell being an elder in the Baptist church and things like that. It makes sense. But I'm going to go with an 8. So what does that make it? Like a 7.5?
Yeah.
Technically, overall. 7.5.
7.5.
I think that is a fair adjustment. That's a fair adjustment for the Bell Witch. So let us know what you guys think about the Bell Witch. And if you've been to the Bell property or anywhere around it, let us know, because I'd love to hear your experience and thoughts. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode.
It was very weird to begin with.
It was.
We had a weird start.
We had a weird start, but that's okay. Sometimes it's like that.
So first-time listeners, this is not normal.
This is not normal. This is not even our normal filming day. We're filming this in the middle of the week. We never do that. So this is
odd.
This is a weird time. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. And my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.